Thanks for staying with us. The countdown is on to Inauguration Day, and we are looking at some of workers' demands ahead of the incoming administration. I'm joined now by Public Affairs Analyst Biodun Sowunmi. Thank you for joining us on the countdown. It would seem that very soon the euphoria of the electoral victory will give way to some serious business for the incoming administration, particularly when you consider the requests of workers on May Day. They are asking for an increase in salary. For instance, the Congress had noted that no amount of increase in their naira terms would be good enough if government did not control the rise in inflation and high cost of goods in the country. How daunting a challenge would you say this is for the incoming administration?
Honestly speaking, anyone who is taking on the job of turning the economy of Nigeria around now should really be praised. The country is in a very tough situation currently. We've had inflation eroding the living wages of the people. We've had a situation where we now need to remove subsidy on fuel due to the fact that we're spending over 90% of our income to finance our debt. And consequently, it means the country does not have enough funds to finance either development projects or even in some cases to pay salaries, particularly in some states, which are owing between 8 and 11 months. Now, given that situation, there is a need to rethink the economy. The only way to re-engineer the economy will involve some things. There is a need to balance inflation, with the realities on ground, because the reality is the living wages of the people have been badly eroded, and once the subsidy is removed, the new government will have to introduce some palliatives to ameliorate the pains, the excruciating pains that people will feel. And consequently, it behoves on the president-elect to put a team together to walk through this very difficult study journey of re-engineering the economy, while at the same time making sure that people are well catered for and they have a living wage. That is a promise which Tinubu has made to the whole country. One way we all need to think about is how do we resolve, the contradictions that will unfold. What do I mean by this? The contradiction is very clear. Labour Party has as its trustee the trade union movement, the two umbrella organizations of the trade union. So consequently, they are part and parcel of the opposition. And should that be the case, every move of the Labour Party in opposing, or of the trade unions in opposing government reforms may be seen, to be partisan.
We'll get to the partisan affiliation of organized labor shortly, but on top of the purchasing power of the average Nigerian, Mr. Sowunmi, Labour is also talking about the debt profile that seems to have tremendously climbed up in the past 8 years, unlike the outgoing administration that inherited a debt of approximately $10.32 billion. Asiwaju might be getting a whole lot more than that. We're looking at about $103 billion. The figure on the street is 77 trillion naira, even though the debt management office is putting it at 46.2 trillion naira. But perhaps we're looking at an unprecedented debt burden in Nigeria's history. Is there a magic wand to this effect? Because, there's also the management of the expectation of the average Nigerian, particularly when a new name comes, on board. Is this something that can be fixed as early and as quickly as Nigerians want it?
Oh, yes. It depends on which figures you're looking at. There are some figures combining the internal and external debt, claiming something around 71 trillion naira as the debt that will be inherited by the incoming administration. What this means is that stringent measures will have to be taken with a view to be able to freeze particularly the ones with multilateral agencies and bilateral debt, this can be rescheduled and spread over a period of time in order to free some capital, for the new administration. The second issue is what the president-elect himself said during his campaign. He spoke about Nigeria exporting more and reducing importation. The need for us to produce what we consume within the country. That also will require investment. It will require support for businesses, support for those investors within the country, and will require a lot of foreign direct investment, the FDI, from foreign countries. That cannot be done overnight. This will take some time before they materialize. The first 1 year of the regime, in my view, will be dedicated to how to free funds, either through debt rescheduling or outright cancellation or reduction in payments of some debt, one way or the other. That is the first task that the new regime probably would have to deal with, while at the same time looking at how to cut down on importation while increasing export of goods. One of the factors militating against the exportation of goods from Nigeria is the high cost of production. One is caused by power supply problems because diesel is not cheap nowadays. Many companies have had to rely on diesel. Then the other problem is also the cost of PMS. PMS, once the subsidy is removed, the cost of PMS will go up. So the cost of running businesses will certainly go up. But this can easily, be negated through exchange rate stability. For instance, the government may choose to merge the two exchange rate systems. That is, the official rate and the black market rate. Merge it into one single exchange rate while concentrating on refurbishing the refinery, repairing those refineries. Once we are able to get the refineries repaired by October, this will free a lot of the foreign exchange being used to import PMS into the country. And that will create a measure of stability, for the exchange rate system in the country. So all this will take some time. It's not something that would happen overnight.
Absolutely.
It will require a lot of patience from the trade unions, from the workers, and from all Nigerians. Because things are bad, and we've got to fix it. We have no other country other than this one. And the man that can do the job is the man that has been elected.
We also do not have the luxury of time, Mr. Sowunmi, given the promises that Nigerians have had in the previous years and particularly in the outgoing administration. You talked about the removal of fuel subsidy. That's one thing the president-elect was categorical about during his campaigns, that he has to let go of these. You know that the Buhari administration seemed to be shying away from the June deadline for the removal of fuel subsidy. You're saying it will take time, and the president-elect is saying this is something I'm committed to doing. Just how much time do you think it would take to create that buffer that is needed? Will you consider, for instance, the amount of naira that we now exchange for a liter of petrol when this is done?
What I mean by it will take time is before we can see exchange rate stability in a way that many people will feel comfortable, in a way that will help our exports to be more competitive, that will take time. In terms of removal of subsidies, I expect that this will get done within the next 3 months of the new administration. What the government needs to do once the administration comes in is to go into compact with the trade union movement, which is basically to reach a set of agreements around productivity, around remuneration, including allowances for workers, and set a target time, for implementation, which government will be very faithful to, unlike what we have recently in the recent past, successive administrations, when these are never respected. So once we are able to do that, I'm sure many Nigerians will show the necessary level of understanding.
Do you think, Mr. Sowunmi, do you think it will be quite easy to get organized labor on board. Recall Occupy Nigeria, I believe in 2020 in 2012 was also, a fallout of an attempt by a previous government to tow this path. You talked about organized labor and partisan politics earlier. They are saying that they will continue to get involved in politics, and the reason is to bring matters surrounding the welfare of workers to the front burner of programs and policies of government. And according to them, the current labor movement is owned by the Labour Party, and this is perhaps the first time that they have a popular candidate who will help them drive that opposition. On the contrary, the president-elect in his May Day speech is also saying that organized labor will find in him a dependable ally and co-laborer in the fight for social and economic justice for all Nigerians. At best, these are all talks, but what do you see play out, seeing how politically active organized labor has become and, the proposal on the part of the president-elect to remove subsidy?
I have no doubt that the president-elect is the right person to do the job because he has the experience of managing industrial relations in Lagos. I remember quite very well in 1999 when the president-elect became the governor of Lagos State, he was faced with a major challenge from the trade union. I remember quite clearly the NLC in Lagos State at that point in time was highly militant and were challenging the reforms being implemented by government. Eventually, he was able to resolve this issue in a way that today, staff workers do not go on strike in Lagos. They are assured of their wages. Even when the former president, General Olusegun Obasanjo, withheld Lagos State statutory allocation to local government, he still ensured that workers were paid their due wages, at the right time. And given his vast experience in negotiating, the complex industrial relations issues, I have no doubt that it could transpose it, to the national level and engage the trade union movement in a compact. That compact will be about agreement on the way forward. This is the situation on the ground. This is how much the country is owing. This is how much we're using to service the debt. This is the few money available, which is not enough, for recurrent and capital expenditure. So we need to do this. We need to remove this subsidy. But this is what we would do, as palliatives to reduce the impact of the pain on not only workers, on all Nigerians, and at the same time also inflate, the salaries of workers.
Absolutely,
that's
that's fine, as long as we are not also, borrowing money to do that, because as we speak, we hear that we're unable to even service our debt without borrowing. But as we begin to wrap up, I'd like us to end with this quote from President-elect's speech yesterday. He did say, quote, "The days ahead will demand better understanding and cooperation from all sides because leadership, according to him, will require that we take tough and hard decisions so that our people and all Nigerian workers can live more abundantly." Just how much of hard life can Nigerians take, going further? You recall that in the early days of this outgoing administration, we heard stories about the initial pang of birth. Things are going to eventually get better. You need to ask Nigerians on the street to tell you what their experience is in that regard. But what do you expect? How do you think Nigerians can cope with all of these tough decisions that must be taken, to better their lives?
Yes, I have no doubt that there is trust deficit in government in Nigeria today. But there's a renewed hope being brought about due to the experience and achievements of Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, who has been elected, as the president of the country. The truth of the matter is there is no gain without pain. There is no way we can fix the economy in Nigeria today without some pain being experienced by the people. The fact of the matter is it is time to right time, the civil service. It is also the right time, to ensure that we intensify our efforts to create the enabling environment for private business to be able to thrive. For instance, one of the factors militating expansion of the economy is the high interest rate. There's no way you borrow money at 25, 30%, and then expect to make a profit and pay back within a year or two. It's almost impossible. So I'm sure that this is one of the areas where government will have to look at the percentage base rate points, on interest being charged, and also look at the administrative charges being charged by the bank. So there are quite some measures that have to be taken. All these steps are taken, it will take time before we begin to see the fruits of it. Eventually, the country will be better off because the private sector would lead the development of the economy, would lead the expansion of the economy, rather than government having to play that role. And that fact, I think, has been made very clear by almost all the aspirants in the last election. But we have only seen a more concrete suggestions and plans, coming from the president-elect. And I have no doubt that Nigerians show the necessary level of tolerance as long as they know, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. Good place to live. Biodun Sowunmi, thank you so much. You're supposed to be sitting next to me. I understand you're stuck in traffic. That's perhaps something government also has to consider. How do we fix the roads, using world best practices without, losing so many man-hour and frustrating, the hell out of people. But a big thank you for joining us on the program this evening. Biodun Sowunmi, Public Affairs Analyst.
Thank you for having me.